If Adolf Hitler could convince the United States of America that in order to save our soul, he would have to destroy us, do you think he wouldn't? Good morning. My name is Matt Creary. This is the premiere episode of YouTube's Cordial Encounter. Prisoner of Pillow Talk is the name of this episode. So who am I? James McRyland Creary. The Donald Trump's insurrection would cause toxic fumes in the neighborhood nearby to illustrate that hell is imminent for those engaged in isolation research of pornography. Well, for one, I come from Limbaugh's region. Take a look at this. This was my grandfather, Ward Moore. The cartoonist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch did this. He's a man, all the most distinguished names in Midwestern journalism appear on this signed portrait from his illustrious career, where he crossed paths with men like Walt Disney and was a friend of John Neihardt, the poet laureate of Kansas. Ward Moore worked for the Wichita Herald, the Miami Herald, among other things, and got through the Dust Bowl by a community newspaper where each letter on the typesetting machine was a heavy rod, 3 or 4 feet long, and letter by letter he would put out the newsletter, working the mill. He was married for 66 years. He enlisted in both World War I and World War II, but was turned down as vital services. Now, of course, the people who tortured me, they poured acid on my face as a child, like to brag that my work is valuable to them, that I should be subject to a sort of Lions Club ethic, a secret society rules sheet that has nothing to do with American principles. It's a club. So, just exactly what do I have to offer? My father was a naval veteran of World War II, a Peace Corps leader and chair of philosophy of education at the University of Pittsburgh. I've made Phi Theta Kappa despite the handicap of deafness, thanks to a educationally deprived Korean girl who taught me sign language, and I'm something of an amateur historian. I can give you the benefit of some understanding about what I witnessed and what I know, particularly concerning what's going on with the germ weapon, COVID-19, and how I know it's a germ weapon, and why I think we should be talking about it and investigating it properly. One of the things that we know about this situation with me is that it goes way back. But most importantly, it's a complex strategy that's at work in a society that's being divided upon much more simplistic lines in order to make people think they understand one another while this complex strategy works its will over their misunderstandings. This puppeteering comes from an alliance within media that includes almost every publication. And why we know that is because if we look at the film that came out in the early 80s, Diva, you see my birthday. You see an allusion to my hitchhiking adventure to St. Louis from Pittsburgh to hear Robert Fripp play. You see This Island Earth on the record stacks with Peter Gabriel's songs, who had written to me for a long time. And this islander's refrain is, I can't breathe. What they got Geo Floyd to say when they caroused Black Lives Matters into the streets for super spreader events that have created geriatricide, a word they taught me in advance, using germ weapon in my mouth prior to the COVID insurrection, which Trump lionized by signing a plaque in the Alamo because Elton John has been whipping up hatred for me among queers over the script that they planted on me after knocking me out as a child, which bears the sanction for all of this in the name of John Lennon, a mystery. Capitalized on by Yoko Ono and Trump from their New York Hollywood war games, featuring people like Mel Gibson and Peter Gabriel. So, in history, another thing that you see in Diva is it says that the secret is in the kid's mailbag. You see, so my birthday, the illusion and the secret in the kid's mailbag shows that the drama is an arc. They call it Tang phenomenon because they're building cross-racial families, for example, to save the world for the rich while they exterminate those of us who are poorer and weaker. And of course, they've delayed the vaccines deliberately and sent their angels of death into the nursing homes to make sure they get rid of many people as they can. And our society is all abuzz with toxic words for one another, but they've all abandoned our grannies, they've all abandoned our exes, and they're making a big toxic stinking liquid about porno. So you see, the alliance in Diva is between black and white. None dare call it an alliance. Although Black Lives Matters went into the super spreader streets for the Green Party, nobody dares admit that. The enforcers in Seattle, people who poisoned me in the mouth, were men like Aaron Dixon from the Black Panthers Party, the Jericho Project. When Trump gave Kim his love present of a big nuclear missile, he also made contact with Mumia Abu-Jamal, who said, yes, we'll put a hex on the house for Ono of her little boy adversary who she hates and chose because of the naval representation and so on. And of course the swastika girls are all for it. They'll sleep with any American who betrays our country. So, you know, what Trump was capable of with attorneys like Melvin Belli was to put Jackie Onassis in the limousine with Kennedy, who we now know was party to the fatal headshot, and it's just disgusting. And you can't criticize the Kennedys per se. They got suckered into that situation the way they suckered me into the situation with Rosa, who was named for the black leader of the Green Party, see? So she was working the will of the white establishment in a cooperation that none dare call an alliance with the Black Panthers. But, you know, they were making horrifying extrusion tapes of the neuroplasm with the NAACP and the CIA at Carnegie Mellon University, Jaime Carbonell and Nelson Harrison, and Joe Biden names this guy Jaime Harrison to a leadership position because they know in the union how this all was manipulated. So they have this Ono Trump enforcer from the Black Panther Party. They placed the girl in a limousine, Rosa. You know, presumably they used the last name Clemente to endorse for Roberto Clemente that he would go along with the murder of Martin Luther King and so forth. It's just ridiculous because people can't see that it's an alliance in the green axis, an arc that's fighting, pretending to fight race wars. Like the New Republic puts in this thing about white evangelicals misleading people. Although there are white evangelicals misleading people, that's only half the story. When they go in and scare AOC, that gives her credit. But AOC and Omar may very well be in the Green Party as tokens of Her Majesty's plan of action, which includes the staving off of overpopulation for the Greta good, so to speak, which is what this has been. And the hypocrisy is very clear if you look at my upbringing. You know, Sean Brooks and the Brooks establishment, all buzzards of Christianity, right? And they work with Harold T. Lewis of the NAACP's churchliness, who, you know, assure Dyslexter King that his father would have been with George Lucas. You know, longevity has its place, and I may not get there with you, but I'm gonna have me a big statue myself in D.C. And my dyslexia is gonna be rich. Okay, this is Lucas's idea of the Chinese philosopher Martin Luther King. So you have these La Femme Confucians who come up out of the woodwork and kill JFK because, you know, the white man wants Obama to be president more, so he won't mind if we just get him out of the way. You know, this is their logic. Sean Brooks was close friends with Stuart Shepard, who, you know, was part of a network of people from the Pittsburgh Symphony who lived next door to me with names like Hank Van Sickle, which is like Rip Van Winkle, and you're saying Van Sickle, which is a symbol of death, right? Supposedly they don't know about the girl with the death tattoo in Mount Desert Island and the needle tracks, where they were coaching their Alamo signifier for, you know, violins for the Texas Queers, you know, and so forth, who were, you know, going to go to heaven to the music of the fiddlers of Auschwitz, which is really where all this comes from. The script was from Israel. And that's what Amy Globalzar means when she says she knows you. She knows you'll say, do it to them, not us. Do it to them, not us, you know. And you can't even keep out of the streets when it's going to spread to the grannies. So you're bumping off the grannies left and right, you know. And this Jackie O and Rosen business is just a way of getting people going, like as though, you know, that's their only priority. And then they say it's me. I'm not doing nothing wrong. I'm keeping to myself, you know. I would have loved to have a family, but Stuart Shepard, who's part of that syndicate, writes these things about sex. It's like, you know, Tropic of Cancer. Everything is sex. And he's friends with Sean Brooks, the Mighty Christian, right? So you have, like, Chris Dusterhoff in Seattle, another one of these managing people pretending to be on the left when working the will of Trump. He puts in his newspaper spread, those who understand, understand. Those who don't get poisoned. Okay, now this the people poisoned me in the mouth, who covered up for the AIDS experiment on Mount Desert Island. One of whom was living with this girl whose brother dropped dead, right? And, you know, this syndicate is much more preferential to my sister than me. So you have this situation when they murder somebody who's namesake of my niece in Iowa, because I'm from Iowa and identify with that. So they're playing the panoramas of symbology and all of this, right? And you're not supposed to notice that he says everyone else gets poisoned, as though poison isn't a factor in what these people were doing. And of course, the FBI are layabouts. They don't give a shit about it. They have Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr says, that stuff's worth money, man. That stuff's worth money. Yoko Ono calls dibs on it, man. We'll kill somebody if we don't get the money from that. You know, and that's been their mainstay through the whole thing. The grossest enabler of Donald Trump has been Ringo Starr. And if you trace that crowd like Van Sickle back to Pittsburgh, you find Demarest, the professor from the age of Warhol, who knew all of Warhol's friends and employed my mother Nancy when she was a student teacher. And he is manipulating this crowd and was friends with a group calling themselves Artec. I mean, that's pretty brazen, from WQED, who are making all the extrusion tapes, right? And burning girls' gangrenous and saying it was to bring them back to reality. And, you know, Trumpy tuning Mr. Rogers while they used me for this AIDS Alamo that they insist, you know, is saving the soul from fire and brimstone and so on. And Demarest was friends with this guy from Architect who brought me in contact, locked me in a house from the inside, corrections style, with a man who brutally tortured me named Casper as a child. He came up behind me. He ruined me. And I used to write cartoons to Tim Menace when I was in alexithymia, a condition that is only ultimately known to the Holocaust survivors. But they ran a Holocaust simulation experiment. That's how they knew I would be hiding in the top shelf of my towel closet, like Anne Frank. Next, they don't say like Anne Frank because the black man doesn't like the misappropriation of the symbol. That's dialectical UWism. And dialectical UWism are heapistry. The sanction of Lenin comes in all of this stuff. Because if you look at the fact that the Kennedys start disappearing, well, nothing is real. Well, nothing is real. If there's nothing, there's nothing. So they bring in Greta Thunberg, and she says, well, yes, the mayonnaise cartoons from Thunberg, Pittsburgh, do show that Queerbait was trying to get help and had been tortured. But we have a right to poison him in the heart. Poison, poison, poison. For the greater good, right? So you have this situation where Artek locks me in a house from the inside with a man named Casper at a party for Salk Research Labor Team, okay, which was next door to Leslie Park. And you would have to know that this girl Leslie's virginity was being hypertrophied in the script that bore Lenin's sanction. Robert Fripp was saying, oh, Jimmy Carrey wanted some and he didn't get it, so that means he was obsessed with her virginity. He doesn't give any credence to the fact that I was in love with this girl. So they have me locked in the house with Casper, the friendly ghost of fascism, right? Adolf Hitler's friendly ghost, who tortured me for the Neva Corporation. And they have called this Mancine, like Manson Cinema. And they're working with George Romero, Night of the Living Dead. And of course, the FBI are layabouts. They don't care about any of that creepy stuff. Just let it go. So they pretend, Louis Kahn, as Leslie Katz's initials, LK, was a Holocaust survivor who built the Salk Research Labs. There's only a few places where AIDS could have come from, but WQED masterminds say, no, the black man has a deeper understanding that the swastika is a sacred African symbol. So we're going to help the black French in Africa commit genocide because it's a sacred thing. And we're going to work with Louis Kahn and Viktor Frankl, another Holocaust survivor, in killing symbols. So they have this white puppet from King Crimson, white puppet from King Crimson, and then we'll chop its head off. And that'll make, Aaron Dixon, the enforcer for Yoko Ono, happy. That'll make the swastika girls happy and so on. And the FBI are layabouts. They don't care about any of that. So, with the place that looks in history has to do with the fact that do the right thing, which mentions Donald Trump. Spike Lee was always a favorite of Donald Trump. Took place as a cover story for Mount Desert Island. That was when Mount Desert Island was happening. Spike Lee didn't come to no rescue, not in Mount Desert Island, not in Hurricane Katrina. He saw AIDS as doing the right thing. Yeehaw, that's the way it went. And Václav Havel was working with Spike Lee and the Dalai Lama on the stuff with Leslie's fond lesbian for Magical Religion friend who looks like Lenin and carries the Lenin sanction of all of this for the scriptwriters. Tammy, who looked like Tommy, and Tammo de Jong's theory of, signifiers, puppets that signified portions of the Mass. So you get rid of the Mass and save the puppets that signified portions of the Mass for the greater good of the ark that they're going to build. And if they don't, well, they'll put it up in fire and brimstone, right? So you have a whole situation where you have the doubling down on the rhapsody of controlling people by blackmailing them through private use. It's a consumer problem. Consumer protection problem. You make a scrapbook of things like online porno and suddenly you have to be a sex slave. And Watmaker, he had this school in his backyard where he showed me how to, the mania of Venus flytrap. See, and they gassed me at King's Estate, which is like Heavenly Estate. Claude Lanzmann's film about the Holocaust said that the Heavenly Estate was the Himmelschweg, the ramp to the gas chambers was the road to heaven. So the Venus flytrap is the road to heaven for the fly. And Yoko Ono's art house films have a fly carousing a woman's body going into her armpit and stuff like this. Okay, so you have, the fly trap concept of AIDS coming out, and Donald Trump's son dating a girl named Gail Foyle, like wheel foil, like, tinfoil hat, about Gail Burston, Gail Carolyn Burston, Gay Honest Christmas Carolyn Bombs Burston. And the guys go along with this because they want to be as one with the Jews that killed them. The Venus flytrap stuff. And they were appalled at the idea of social distancing to protect people when AIDS happened. They were saying things like, if you wash, we'll be offended. That was coming through the chain of command of the Alamo Project, of Penis J. Sinfield and Donald J. Trump. So while they were doing this, they were following Viktor Frankl's, logo rape panic. Logo ripper John Kennedy for John Lennon's sanction, but then we evacuated Lennon. We pulled him out and said he was killed too, so everything is owed to Yoko Ono. You owe the whole world to Yoko Ono. Now, what a trick. That's how he won the war. He even had a film called How I Won the War, and it's full of the symbolism of what they did. But, the truth just rolls over on itself because it has not been sanctioned, but he's gone. They had a double fantasy going, right? So you have the double fantasy going and then Hollywood's trickery. And the same situation comes up in, the business about Diva. We have this guy named Cure, right? Q-Ray, they're going to brain beam. The so-called conscience who's, aware that Jewish sentimentalism is part of how they manage to survive. And the experts for all this, of course, are soundtrack experts. They were the ones working through the Warhol with Jaime Carbonell and Demarest and extruding what they implanted in the little kid they were calling queerbait. Okay, so they get soundtrack experts for Revolution Number 9, which is what they were doing. And John Lennon pulled out. He stepped out, but he really was behind Revolution Number 9, just as Yoko Ono is. But nothing is real, see? So when they kill some more candidates, nothing is real. You can't get that. It rolls over on itself. You can't do anything about that. It's a license for them. Lennon's sanction is a license for them to do all that. So they can do anything they want. And you're hostage to skepticism about it, right? So they built a private prison with secret justice for a wrongfully accused deaf child. How am I supposed to watch my back when I can't even hear what's going on behind it, right? And they taunt me as whispers. Nobody has ever put up with more peer ridicule than me from both the left and the right because none dare call it an alliance. Donald Trump ridicules somebody who has a disability and they say, oh, that's mean of Trump. But Matt Marcus, who born some girls gangrenous, calls his entire slander campaign with John Schulman and Peter Gabriel whisper about a deaf man, and people don't think that's me. No, because you're pushy and the swastika girls say no. So you have this situation with Black Lives Matter, who are just basically agents of Saudi Arabia and the whole thing. And, when you had this old woman come up and straighten her shirt at John Stockwell followed me to Allentown in 1987 on my birthday. She says, well, you're lucky you can say these things in America. And Stockwell gives this mocking look at somebody who says the one true thing about the United States is we are lucky we can tell the truth, And so they have this situation with, Black Lives Matter's agent in Saudi Arabia and the Ark pulling this dirty for, Havel and Spike Lee, and none dare call it an alliance. But that's what it is. It's the left and the right working together on a more thinning of the trod while, they play like, oh, well, we need reconciliation now. So it's been going on a long time. After World War II, when you see Mothra, the rescue from Godzilla, comes on a Hawaiian island. So, the Japanese show up. You don't really want these white people. You want us, we're better for you. So, I end up with Texas queer embracing Midori Goto instead of a child who was tortured for being gay, right? Queer-like, girl-like. He wasn't actually gay, but they did hideous gay things to him. And they say, well, that's because, we're not communists. Gays aren't communists, And then this is the sort of mentality that they bring to it. So, it's all, created in such a way that, our society thinks they can see what's going on, but it's much more complicated than our society is willing to properly assess and understand. Meanwhile, they generate warped slanders from every direction, so everyone forsakes dignity. Well, they have this poltergeist, nothing is real, coming up out of the swamp, killing Kennedy, zap, 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 zapping them between the odds, and with Lenin's sanction, they say, oh, that nothing is real. Well, the fact is that this is how we lost our schools. And our schools are now a place where only one voice is allowed. Nobody's allowed to go to school. Pink Floyd came and wrecked them for Donald Trump. Smash. And you better go along with Lenin's sanction, boy. It's their method of, hokum pokum. And they say, oh, well, we'll stab a girl over a penny, And everybody has forsaken dignity. Everybody has.